My name is Luther Cifers. I'm a husband. There's my beautiful wife, Anastasia. I'm a father of 5, and I'm a grandfather of 1 with another one on the way. I'm not a politician. I'm an entrepreneur. I've spent my entire life first building a career, building a life, raising a family, and then building businesses. I think the parallels here are, if you know how to solve problems, you know how to solve problems. And my life has taken a lot of twists and turns, and I've lived at a lot of different stations in life in pursuit of the American dream. I tell you all this not so much to give you my resume, but to explain that it doesn't matter what station of life someone is in our district. I've probably spent a few years there. And I think one of the problems that we have in Richmond and in Washington as well is that I don't think we have a lot of people. I think we have some well-intentioned people, and I think we have people that want to do the right thing in a lot of cases, not in all cases, but in a lot of them. But if you don't have the perspective of the average person, if you don't have the perspective of the working person, if you don't have the perspective of the small business owner or the person who may be trying to, find gainful employment and build from, a lack of education or however they started off and actually build a career and have those opportunities. If you don't have that perspective, how can you craft legislation that addresses those people's needs? And more than anything, that's what I want to bring to Richmond, is an idea that if you understand what people are going through, you can craft legislation or get rid of legislation, as it may be, and that's probably a big part of the work that needs to be done, that directly addresses the needs of those people. Everybody wants to know legislative priorities. What are your legislative priorities? Which bills do you want to pass? Well, we have a lot of laws on the books. I think there is a need to pass some legislation. I think we spend money poorly in this Commonwealth. Actually, in the whole country, we spend money poorly. And I think we need some legislation to tighten that up and spend it on things that have strategic value that directly impact not donors, but the citizens and the way that they would like to see their communities develop. But I think just as importantly as that is being on committees where other legislation is going through and making sure that the shape and form of that legislation doesn't lose its purpose. If it starts off, we're going to do some economic development activities because we want to, increase the availability of jobs in an area. But then you get to the end and you realize that we spent a ton of money on infrastructure, millions and millions, sometimes tens of millions of dollars, and we created 14 jobs. Well, in business, you have to scratch your head and ask yourself, was the investment worth it? So it's partly about introducing legislation, but it's also partly about making sure that the legislation that's being passed has its intended purpose. We've got some friends who are working on they've got a storefront that the paint was not looking very good. They're conscientious people, citizens, like the rest of us, trying to do the right thing, so they start painting their building. The town comes out and gives them a stop order. Why? Because they didn't get a building permit. So now you need permission from the government to maintain your property. That is not how this started. And these are just small anecdotes, small recent anecdotes that have happened right here in small town America, but this is throughout the entire system. If you talk to anybody who's involved with any kind of business whatsoever, the regulatory burden is getting heavier and heavier and heavier. And because of that, the opportunity for small businesses to combat or to deal with that regulation is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Because if you don't have the money, if you can't hire the engineers, if you can't navigate the red tape, if you don't know how to fill out 47 different forms or under penalty of law, end up in all kinds of trouble, how do you get started? It's not simple anymore. Why isn't it simple anymore? Because of regulation. Why is the regulation there? Because we're not trusted. We have, as business owners, we have to fill out a new form today. It's called a beneficial ownership form. I don't know if you guys had to do it. We had to do it this year for the first time. And I did a little Googling on this. I'm like, what is this new form for? Like, why do we need another form? And I looked it up, and it's like, well, it's to verify that the ownership in the business is not money laundering and is not funding terrorists. Does that sound like trust? We probably need some controls for stuff like that, but adding another paperwork on top of a bunch of other paperwork that already says the same thing might not be the most common sense way to approach that. And if we care so much about it, why did we open the southern border and let millions upon millions of people across, knowing that our enemies can just line up there, say a couple of nice words when they come across and get asylum. So our government doesn't trust us, but it trusts people that we have no idea who they are or where they came from or why they're here. Why is that? I don't know, but what I do know is that the citizens should be trusted, and the government we should be a little bit wary of the government, and we should have the checks and balances to keep the government in check, not the other way around. These are just some examples of why I'm running. I think if you can see solutions, I think if you have real world experience and you understand what people are dealing with at all these different stations of life, if you understand the unintended consequences of all this legislation that's been built one on top of another for so many years, I think you can inspire other people in the Senate body. That's part of my objective, is to not just to put bills forth, but to have conversations with people about how things are supposed to work and help to educate them as to how it's really happening in the real world, and see if we can start making a difference and moving the needle here.